Is it recording?
I'm here.
Okay, I can hear you now.
You hear me now?
I just can't tell if it's recording or not. Okay, it's recording. Okay. I'm starting.
Do you see me?
Yes, I can see you. Thank you. Okay, so I did my presentation on gender inequality, and mainly I'm focusing on women because it affects women more than it affects men. And you can't say anything inappropriate, Dad. I'm saying this right now because I'm recording this. This is getting turned in.
hmm
Um, like I said, I'm focusing on women because there's a lot of events that happened that led to women and men having more changes and differences between how they're viewed in work and their family life. So I wanted to start off by talking about what gender is. And there's been a lot of changes, I would say, recently within like society of what gender is. And I think there's been a lot of questions about why isn't it like sex is like sex is the definition of sex is like your biological identity. Like it's either you have an X chromosome or you have a Y chromosome, and you can't change that. That's just how you are. It's your biological definition of who you are. You can't change an X chromosome or a Y chromosome. That determines if you're male or female. However, gender is more of like a social concept. It's what you believe you are, what you believe your biological sex is in a way. You can change it. There's been new talk about transgender and people saying that their gender doesn't fit how they feel, and then they'll change to whatever they feel fits them correctly. So it's hard to talk about because a lot of people don't, there's a lot of discrimination against it, but sex and gender are two different things and they cannot be described as the same thing. So I thought I would talk about that first. So it's important to bring up the history because the history describes why things have changed so much and why women have more gender discrimination between the two, especially in work. In the early 1900s, women started to gain more rights because the Women's Suffrage Act. Women protested and they got the ability to vote, which really set off things for women because that's when women started to get more advancements in what they can do in their life. They weren't just stuck to this theory that women should work in a house. They should take care of the house, take care of the family. They weren't to work. They weren't to make any of the income for the house. The man was supposed to provide everything money-wise, but he wasn't required to take care of the children or take care of the house. But that view's kind of been changing recently, more now towards where we are now. Another big part of that was the Great Depression. So in the Great Depression's kind of like after that and during it is when women started really fighting for their rights, the right to have a job, the right to go out and make money and provide for their family, because during the Great Depression or before the Great Depression was the war. So women didn't have men to rely on to bring them an income. And within that, there was a lot of widows. And with a lot of widows, they didn't have husbands to rely on. So they didn't have any way to make an income. And then they were forced to marry again, but that's also difficult. So this kind of forced women to start wanting to get jobs and hold jobs, and which changed the economy because we needed more people to have jobs because all the men were away at war and then they came back and all that happened. So that's really when women started to join the whole labor force and change things. And like I said, women's roles have been changing and evolving in the last few years. You know, women are getting educated. Women are changing their roles within society. They aren't just stuck in a house anymore. They can be educated and they can have a higher standard for themselves, and they can go out and they can do more stuff for themselves. They can provide for the family. They don't need to be stuck in this little bubble that they used to be stuck in. And as you can see in this graph, the percentage of women with children under the age of 1 and you can see how a lot of them have jobs and they hold jobs and they're at work and they're working and they have children, but they can still have a life and work and provide for their family and provide for their children instead of being stuck at home and just their only job being to provide for their only job to be taking care of the child, not going and making an income and having a family. So now it's more common for nowadays it's more common for a family to have 2 people bringing in a steady income. It's not just one person's bringing in an income and the other staying at home. Now we have women and men married bringing in 2 separate incomes together to make one very solid income, which then provides for a more solid family, a more solid home life. You can provide more for your children. You're more likely to be stable and have a better life for your children this way. And you can see how much after the 1960s, all the labor forces have gone up. So then you can see how much that graph has just bopped and peaked right there because of all those women having jobs. Oops. So then I'm going to talk about women in the workforce because I feel like it's the most important aspect and it's changed a lot. There's still a lot of discrimination and there's still women not getting paid as much as men, and there's still this theory that men hold a specific type of job and women hold a specific type of job, and it goes into depth about how women will hold a more care job than a man will hold. So a woman, there's an example in the book and it said that women will more likely hold a job like a nurse or a caregiving a caregiving job, mom, she's a nurse. Whereas the man will hold more a businessy more type of a job that is more manual and less on the caretaking side and more on science and math and that type of thing. Not that a nurse isn't science and math, but more so that's how it's viewed. And then the book also goes into how men and women do about the same amount of work, but there's 2 different categories of work. There's non-paid work and there's paid work. And more oftentimes than not, you're going to see more men doing the paid work than the unpaid work. And women will be doing more unpaid work than paid work because it's seen as all the care work that women are supposed to do, the taking care of the family, taking care of the children, staying at home, taking care of other people but not getting paid for it, that type of thing, taking care of maybe elders or grandparents or living with them, that type of thing. That's viewed as non-paid work, and oftentimes it does more sit on the women than it does the men. The men usually will hold a paid position more often not than the women. And there's all sorts of graphs and different things in the book that show what kind of non-paid things men versus women, they're side by side. It'll be a graph of the things that men do and the things that women do. And you can see in the graph that men will do the more paid jobs, whereas women do the caretaking jobs. And then another thing I want to talk about is the new thing that women are allowed to be educated. Women have become more educated in the past few years, and you can see it in this graph, how much more money a woman will make if they have higher education. And you can see it, the bachelor's on the left side compared to the right side. If you have an education, and I think that hits both men and women, but in this case, we're talking about women. You can see that if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, you're gonna make more money and you're gonna be able to have more children and be able to provide more for those children. You know, whether it's a bachelor's or associates, any type of education that's higher than a high school degree is going to be more beneficial for women, especially because it creates more opportunities for them, because women don't have you could say women don't have as many opportunities because maybe we're looked down upon for being daintier or whatever, but having an education will get you higher places and you can make more money that way. This just highlights what I already talked about, how women spend more time doing unpaid work, but men do more of the paid work. But with recent changes, there's now more ways for women to make just as much money, maybe even more money than her husband, which I think is great. I think that's fantastic. Women should make more money than men. Women should make the same amount as men. But it's still, there's still studies and statistics that show men still are more likely to make more money than women. It hasn't changed drastically enough that there's going to be a huge difference in it. I mean, there are more, like it says, 1 in 5 marriages, all women will make more than her husband, but that's not a lot. 1 in 5 is not a lot when you compare it. And then it's on the other side, you can see husbands earn significantly more than their wives and more than half of all couples. That's a lot. Half, 50-50. Okay, so then my closing thing, I have basically a graph that shows why women haven't had like an easier time getting rid of the inequality. Like there's still going to be inequality, whether it's in political stances, legal, economical, education, cultural, like all those things come into factors when it comes to why women are unequal when it comes to men, especially in the work setting, in the family setting. Women are always going to be expected to take care of their children. That's just one of the things. We bear the children, we give birth to the children. Usually if the man leaves, that job falls on the woman, and then they have so much of a harder time taking care of that man or that child because they don't have a man and they don't have the double income, and women are still in a spot where they're not equal with the man, so it just creates a whole issue. Okay, and then I do have to have feedback for this, so I'll relate and say my personal experience of how maybe I have lived through and a part of my life where gender inequality has affected me. And I will say, I started as a pre-vet major. The pre-vet world is super competitive. As a woman, you're automatically at a disadvantage because it's a woman dominated field and they don't want to see women all the time. They want to see more men in the field. They don't want to see all these women. And if you're a man, you're almost guaranteed to get in because they need more men. They want more men. There's too many women in the field. And then it just puts you at a disadvantage. So if you're not maybe educationally there or like super high in your studies, but you know, you have all the other extracurriculars, you probably still won't get it because to be a woman, you have to have a 4.0, you have to have all the hours, you have to have everything to even have a shot to get in. Like to share your personal experience.
Well, your dad will say that, you know, I have had to get multiple degrees in my life, and probably for the first time as a nurse with the BSN, I am making somewhere close to what your father makes now. And I'm going back to get a master's degree, which probably will not do anything financially for my paycheck, but will give me the opportunity to flourish in other academia in places that I would not be. But for a very long time, for the amount of work that I do as a nurse, I did not get paid nearly what your father makes. And not a reflection on him. He did a apprenticeship and he has a great job as an electrician. And those jobs need to get paid well, but definitely made a whole lot more money than I did.
Well, Mom, you already answered his, so.
So my previous job, I worked in a warehouse, which is like very male dominated. And I managed to work my way up to get a lead position. I was a lead and I was in charge of all of these forklift drivers, which are all very grown men. And they had trouble adapting to the fact that a woman so much younger than them was in charge and had to tell them what to do. Nobody wanted to listen to me. It was quite often that my supervisor, who was a man, had to come over and tell them exactly what I was telling them before they actually did anything. So that was a big struggle for me. It was quite often that they would complain about how, because I'm so much younger and because I'm female, I can't do the work that they're doing, and that I don't deserve to be getting paid as a lead when I can't do what they're doing. But I was trained as they were, and I was doing the work before I got promoted.
Yeah.
So it didn't really make sense.
Thank you.